Welcome to Powered by Podio. Automation is everything. Supercharge your business with Podio. Get ready for another episode of Supercharged with Jordan Samuel Fleming, your weekly dive into the awesome impact workflow and automation can have on your business when it's powered by Podio. Join us each week as we learn from the top Podio partners in the world, as we investigate system integrations and add-ons, and hear from real business owners who have implemented Podio into their business. Now, join your host Jordan Samuel Fleming, CEO of Gamechangers, for this week's episode.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Supercharged. I'm your host Jordan Samuel Fleming, here to talk all about the power of workflow and automation when your business is powered by Podio. Now, today it's another one of those semi-group episodes. A regular recurring character you're going to be seeing more and more is, of course, our CTO, Andrew Cranston, mainly because he has got such a technical understanding of how Podio can be designed, built, integrated into other systems, API work, etc., that he joins us again because we are joined by none other than Andreas Huttenrauch again. Those of you, as I mentioned on the podcast, if you don't know his name, you know his work, because if you use Podio, then you probably use GlobiFlow, now called Citrix Podio Workflow Automation. I'm never going to get that quite right. He invented it. And really, it is the GlobiFlow / PWA that is the beating heart of most people's systems. It is the automation tool that is so comprehensive. He's come back to the podcast so that Andrew, he and I can dive a bit more into the mini apps. This is an interesting episode because I will say right off the bat, it gets a bit technical at times. I do try and, we start out as non-technical as we can be. But as towards the end, I let them go and they talk geek stuff together. But it's really interesting because we touch on two kind of key things of how one of his newer tools, ProcFu, which of course all the links will be in the podcast. ProcFu has really kind of leveled up Podio workflow and automation in the same way that GlobiFlow did. There's a certain level. Well, ProcFu's taken us even further. And we talk about two kind of things. Number one, we focus heavily throughout the whole episode on the concept of mini apps, because mini apps are so incredibly powerful. And we talk about use cases. It's basically ways in which you can take Podio data and externalize it so that other people can use that, interact with the data, use that data, whether that is a form that they can fill in, submit, and then edit again very easily, or whether it's a full portal where you've got a customer that a group of customers who you want them to be able to log in somewhere, see all the open projects, see the tasks that are open, maybe update things or send in new requests. All that can be done in the ProcFu mini apps. And I will say, for those of you who may be at the beginning level, you can start out with ProcFu mini apps right away. I can do it. I started out with the basics. We do talk more in this episode about some of the more, lights and bells and whistles, but the very basics of it can be done by anyone. And quite honestly, you can set up your first one in about 5 minutes. I did it. That's how long it took me. The second thing we talk about, and this is for the more geeky amongst us, is that ProcFu has this new Sql Sync Service where you can essentially dynamically create a SQL table based on your Podio workspace, based on your Podio app, and immediately start syncing the data up to SQL and use the SQL data inside the mini apps to be able to filter and search super quick. Anybody who knows anything about Podio knows that, if you've got 10,000 items in an app, searching through that can take a long time. And that's because that's not what Podio is really built to do. It's the difference between Podio and SQL in some ways. So we get a bit into that, into the latter half. So it's really a game of two halves. There are a lot of beginner things that I really do recommend you take a look at. And then, of course, we've got the more advanced things at the end, which is fascinating. I learned a lot, as I always do. I do encourage everyone, if you're using Podio, head over to ProcFu. Of course, all the links are going to be in the podcast description, on the YouTube, etc., on the webpage. Try it out. It is an incredible value for the cost. You can get the $25 a month plan on ProcFu, and that gets you access to mini apps. That is a no-brainer in my opinion. Just before we go into the podcast, as always, please take a moment right now, give the podcast a like, give it a little review. It really helps boost it up so more and more people see it. I get feedback from people who listen to it. They've got specific things they want to hear us talk about or things they want us to dive in. Please send it in to me, no problem. Go to wearegamechangers.com. Hit us up, send us in a form, get in contact with me on Podio. I love to hear it. And of course, if you've got an interesting Podio story to tell, please go to wearegamechangers.com and sign up. I'll stop waffling on, and I'll leave you in the capable hands of Andreas, Andrew, and me. Let's listen in.
So when you asked the question, what's new? So one of the things that I know that's new in mini apps is the ability to look at table views in where the data is being pulled from SQL. So yes,
instead of Podio. Okay, well,
yes.
Good. Well, I've already started recording. So
aren't we missing somebody?
I don't know. Is anybody else coming? The Podio partners from the bar are very unreliable.
From the bar.
Very unreliable. But anyway, well, more importantly, I mean, there are obviously we've got you, Andreas. If you've not noticed, I've started the podcast already. I'm going to fade this bullshit in. But we've got you, Andreas, returning champion with Andrew, returning champion, two returning champions. And for those of you who need the briefest of refreshers, Andreas, if you use Podio, you have been touched by Andreas, so to speak, likely because you
make it sound so dirty.
I know. I was going to say, Andreas is lurking, but Andreas is obviously the founder of Globi, which is I guess a software provider more than anything in Canada. And most critically, people will know it as the guy who built GlobiFlow, now called Citrix Podio Workflow Automation, PWA. They obviously, but if you use Podio in any sense beyond just a blue box, then chances are you use Andreas's work. He's also got products around email, GlobiMail, BetterSuperMenu, Inbox, which I still can't figure out how to use. One day he's going to teach me. And most importantly, which was we're going to focus on today, ProcFu, and critically focusing on the mini app function of ProcFu, because I think certainly, and Andrew can back me up here, I've seen an explosion from the systems we build. ProcFu has leveled up. I think it's fair to say ProcFu has taken our systems up a notch in many ways. Some of the our developers, the developers who work, who don't necessarily have Andrew's capabilities, have enormous capabilities in ProcFu now, and mini apps has brought an enormous functionality and huge use case for us with incredible ease. And so I want to focus on that today. Could we maybe talk about a couple use cases? Let's start by just some use cases. Let's set the table, so to speak, with some use cases on mini apps. How about each of us give our favorite use case of mini apps right now? Andreas, you start. I'm putting you on the spot.
I think my favorite one is to create mini portals of Podio data where you're giving external customers access to only the shit that they need access to in a really quick and easy way, that they don't have to even bother with Podio. They don't need a Podio login, but they can still maintain their own accounts and any record that you basically hold on them. This is like help desks, billing. It's endless, really. Whatever you have in Podio, which is about somebody else outside, you can let them self-manage their data.
And not critically bring them into Podio.
Correct.
Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, having like a full, so you talked about the external facing side of things. Now, we have definitely seen a lot of benefit there as well. But one of the things I think that gets underreported is the internal benefits of using mini apps for improving the Podio user interface in places where it's lacking. So one thing that and you've provided many solutions for this on your blog and in other places, always looking at the best way or the best ways to be in one app and create an item in another app with a relationship or fields filled in automatically from the previous app or whatever, and then being taken to that new item automatically. Because we all know that there's a lot of ways in which you can create an item from one app and then get a comment or a relationship field updates, or maybe you use markdown tables and then you go in, but they're all reliant on obviously the user interface not crapping out on you. But when you go from one item to another using a redirect, you're there. And then you can just start working from it. So we've done this in a couple of different ways. We used external links primarily, and they use jQuery, which is like a very well-known JavaScript plugin to redirect the user to another account. Works great in PWA, but it's just create an item here and go. Now, that has not necessarily been sufficient when there's form validation involved. And we want people to be able to fill out forms with real hard data. So we now use it internally a lot in places where the user wants to create a new item, click on the link, and it's a form in ProcFu where some of the things have been filled in. Some of those variables get to be pulled in from the item you've clicked the link from, and then fill in the fields that you want and use ProcScript and JavaScript to try to do some validation. Create the item with ProcFu, and then take the user somewhere, back to the mini app, back to the new item, whatever you want to do. And the redirect bit in ProcScript works awesome too for that. ProcScript does make things a lot easier, I think, to chew on than the average person's ability to kind of know what jQuery is and know what JavaScript is. It's more achievable. So I like it for internal purposes, and we almost always now approach a lot of internal creation processes with either ProcFu or external links, but ProcFu when there's validation to be used.
Not to mention then with your forms, you can also have dependent drop-downs. You can have tabs, all that stuff Podio doesn't have.
I'm going to go that I obviously love the portal element of the mini apps. We use it internal. We use it for our own things. We build it for clients. But I also think that the mini app so elegantly solves some of the biggest problems with Podio web forms. Podio web forms are shit styling wise. You've got no control over anything at all. But most importantly, there's no drop, there's no contextual. If they answer this, open up these things. If there's this, make sure this is required, but only if there's no flexibility. And the pre-filling elements is a pain, and then going back into it is a pain, like trying to give someone an option to re-edit a form they've submitted. Just doing it via Podio, you can, but it's shit, and it's so easy to fuck it up, and it's so easy to you've got to show the field. If it's a relation, you've got to show the field, and then they could fuck it up and all this sort of thing. Where with ProcFu, because you can show a field but lock it in the mini app, and because you can do all these things, they are a huge power web form. If you use web forms at all, you get ProcFu and do them better. Do them better, give them better access, give them better features, and it's incredibly easy to do. And I think that's my thing. One of the things I love about it. Andrew, sorry.
So you and now Andreas, and one of the things that's awesome about ProcFu is that you're always adding new stuff, and sometimes it's difficult to kind of keep up with it all because there's new stuff every day. Essentially, it's like following fish. You got to be like a proc head. You have to stay literally right on top of everything. So further to what Jordan had said with web forms and FUD, you've built an ability to create just like a web form builder, right? Where you can drop in fields and do things with the results at the very end rather than having it based on a Podio item?
The generic form, but you have to build your own HTML for it.
Sure. But the fact that you have, and then you and I have talked about this privately, is that I mean, for me, ProcFu, I've said this before also, but ProcFu for me is kind of an awakening in that it lent me enough motivation to learn how to code on my own. And once you move into your own environment, you start to get a few more powers, and you can see the maneuverability is sometimes of being in an environment where you have more control. But the great thing about ProcFu, and it opens up more and more every day, is that between JavaScript and the proc script and headers and footers, before process, after process, you are giving people a lot of power where they can control elements in a controlled environment. They don't have to worry about rolling out their own environment, their own server, their own bullshit, which is bullshit. It's a hard life to live. So to have this world where you can play around with, yes, I have to know my own HTML, but anybody can learn that if they're really, truly motivated to how to build a proper form and say, okay, learn how to do it here in a safe, controlled environment. And then those tools will help you reach out further to when you're in your own environments, right?
I like this idea of a safe control. It sounds like we're going into something for a fucking therapy session. Like we're in a safe space now. We're not gonna. You're gonna need to learn HTML, but
that's the line of code that caused you the most hassle. Yeah.
Well, and actually, I mean, before we get into some specifics here, I want to sort of, a lot of people who listen to this podcast are new to Podio. And they're getting into Podio. So I want to break it down. I want to examine those two use cases that you guys gave, the internal and the external portal kind of notion. Because for those people who are not that familiar with the concept of a portal and how it relates to Podio data, obviously the great thing, I think we all agree, the great thing about Podio is that you can very rapidly build these data structures, the apps, you can link them together, you can build simple workflows, complex workflows. You can build a system in such a small amount of time compared to so many other options out there. And that's wicked. But there are times when you have all this data, all this, you've got your finance data or your projects data and your, all these little bits of data in Podio, but you've got an external consultant who simply needs to see a bit of it and provide an update, see some project files or see some project information and click something and provide an update to bring them into Podio. If they only have to do that once a month, it's madness, because you're going to become a fucking Podio support where they log in every once a month and go, wait, where do I go to this? What's this? What's the blue box? I don't understand. Like it's hard for those of us who use Podio every day, 5 billion times a day. We can zip around and just we don't even think about it. But for people who aren't, like any system, for people who don't do it a lot, it is very, there's a lot of friction there. So the concept of a portal sitting on top of Podio, if you're building, if you've got someone like external consultants, customers who want to be able to see their invoices or projects, see statuses or submit orders or anything, these things, you can leverage the power of Podio to do all this workflow and build right on top of it, sucking all that information out and displaying it and letting people interact with it in a way where they just log in.
But it's not just to make life easier for those outside contacts, even for your internal team and for yourself. Like I have a lot of apps where I'm only interested in a few fields. I'm interested in one button, and I want it to work one-handed on my mobile device. And you can't do that in Podio because, to have all that functionality of Podio in a little mobile app, it's clunky, it's difficult. And all I want is to be able to scroll up and down, select something and go, okay or not okay, and then it disappears.
That's a good point. I was just trying to set the context of what it means to have a portal. But actually, that's a great use case of, I think we all know, or we've all felt that the Podio app on the mobile is not if you've got a lot of data, it's not a very good user experience. Finding shit, searching shit, scrolling through shit, opening up an app and editing it is not great. You can use mini apps to build web-friendly little versions of what you need from an app that you can just have on your homepage of your phone and go. I do that for my inbox, my email inbox. I've got a mini app that sits on my phone so that I don't have to scroll and click. And I just Open it up. I search for the contact, write an email, boom, 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 done. It's responsive.
And we have
it's all there.
and we also have a mini app form to create a new email to somebody, where normally it would involve creating an item and letting GlobiMail do its thing. Like, we can just let ProcFu gather all the information at once and then act on it once you click a single button. The mobile friendly nature of it is an important thing to note too. Like, the mobile app in Podio does make things challenging if you don't. It's really great if you have strict filtered views already set up. But sometimes those views are dynamic. They're always changing, the things that you care most about. And like you said, having less stuff on the screen. If you do have an app that's 100 fields deep, being able to only have a few things. But we just finished building a massive app for a survey company where that has a field team. And anybody listening that's working with companies that they would have people out in the field definitely need to think about using things like mini apps to feed information to people without them having to, 7 clicks versus 2. I've done a lot of fighting over a single click, but we're not talking about a single click here when you compare what you can get out of a mini app versus the app itself, the native app. Well,
and can we, and maybe Andreas, and I guess we can probably even show. Andrew, could you load up in the background, because this is obviously a YouTube, and I should have thought about this before.
I have thought about it all day, because I was like, what can I show?
Well,
I'm not even 100% sure.
It's one thing to show the output, right? It's one thing to show the output of these things, which we can do, and I can share my screen in a bit. But actually, could you load up our ProcFu account and open up the behind the scenes of one of our support portal?
Are you asking me to get more technical? Did I hear that right?
I'm not getting technical, but I do. Shut up, you.
I just want to make sure.
My podcast, and just
want to make sure.
For those tuning in now, this was strictly prohibited at the beginning.
I don't want to get too technical, but I think this all sounds great in theory. But actually, to show people it's not that fucking hard. It's not that complex is actually a good thing, because mini apps, I can do it. And if I can do it, you can do it.
What an endorsement. get that on a button. I want a button that says that. If Jordan can do it, anybody can do it. So and again, keeping up with the newest and greatest, like this Procky, obviously once everybody saw that Jiffy where all you did was click like 2 things and a whole massive mini app was built before your eyes. Like you're getting better at rolling these things out for people. We've gotten into a good groove, but when you're starting out, it's really all about relationships. You need to figure out how one is going to enter the system. And for us now, what we do generally is you have a global item that represents a person or a company, like a company's app or an employee's app. And then we build an authentication structure, normally with like an MD5 hash or some kind of password that's stored at the item, so that the user has a link that they can click on. And we say, this is your link. When you click on, we try to make it as dynamic and as unguessable as possible, but we say, this is your link. And when you click on it, it logs you in as you, and then we're able to reach out into the system using any relationships that you're related to. Show me all of your leads, show me all of your contacts, show me all of your commission ledgers, you're this, you're that. And then just, use filters to try to break them up. So that's what's going on here. You can see all the arrows pointing back to our global record, which is client profile. And then everything else that we're showing here is either based on how much time our client is working with us in the scope of our support contracts, and then support guides. So the blue represent tables, and then the yellows are actually the individual items. And each table leads to an item, which then leads back to the dashboard of sorts, or back to the home page. So yes, you can see here that you can choose to show or hide certain fields as you see fit, and then this is really where lots of stuff happens. So for instance, like we're showing a detail page where you should normally be able to edit it and save it, but we're using jQuery here or JavaScript to hide that button so that the user's not able to do that. So it just becomes straight up display only. And then within some of the table views, you can show like where the app is coming from, which fields are showing. And a couple of times we've hacked in with the behaviors to be able to control what happens when the user clicks on some items.
And this is really, Steve, can you open that back up? I just want to, so what's really cool here, again, so what we're doing is essentially just kind of linking together screens. This screen, you're going to show a table. And then when they click on an item, it's just like in Podio, you got a table view, right? With the list of all your items. You got 10 items. The table view shows 10 items in the table. You click on one, it takes you to the detail. Just like Podio, this is the same thing. This is the same thing. But here, what we're able to sort of say, okay, you see here, we're getting it from this app. We're seeing these are the relationships we're going through. We're displaying it as a table when we're showing these types of fields. You can get even more complex with some of these other little bits of bells and whistles. But the truth is, this is as easy as it is to show a table of data from Podio that people can view regardless of whether they're in Podio or not.
Hi. Oh, sorry guys. Quick commercial time. It's June 2021. We are launching Supercharged Masterclass series on our website, www.wearegamechangers.com. I'm incredibly excited by this. Quick commercial. It is an opportunity for you to learn a lot more about Podio and the ecosystem and opportunities around it. So you learn about Podio, you learn about how to create basic automations, you learn more advanced things, you learn about communication integration. Basically, it's a chance for you to dive deeper into the Game Changers collective brain and help you take your Podio development to the next level. And of course, as a Supercharged listener and a Game Changers Masterclass user, you will have access to some amazing help resources via our company if you need a little extra help yourself at discounted rates. Now, let's head back to the podcast. Check it out.
And that to me is like, again, I take everything back down to the basics for the people who are just getting started. You could build in probably, if you wanted to build a simple mini app that showed a table of an app where they clicked and it took it into the thing, into the item to show the details, and they could edit certain fields and submit them. I'm guessing without any bells and whistles, you could build that in how long?
I mean, we roll them out now in less than a half a day. Like, Lenny, one of our developers,
if you did two screens, table and item view, you can roll that out in no time at all. I mean, with no bells and whistles, it could take you 5-10 minutes.
Now with this Procky, you probably could literally roll it out in seconds, so yes.
So I think that's a really, and this is the output of that, where if you go, we've got the, nice, you put one in.
Yeah.
You just put one in, did you?
I did, yes,
I was doing that on my screen, and there's nothing else. But if we go back to the main page, just as an example, so here's lots of information, and then we've got some cool bits. We've got these buttons at the top, which are a bit more complex to do. But if we go to the support buttons or the guides, whatever, it's essentially, that's the homepage, right? And those
you can see how we're using and they're light up now. Look at that. See, like things are changing all the time, and I can't even keep up. So so we are actually and this is it. Like it's so complex that you really have to, there's so much to do with it, right? But we have found these ways, and obviously if it doesn't do something and Andreas learns that, it'll be doing it like 5 minutes later. So that's the other benefit, I suppose.
You can double click on them too.
Oh, yes. On these?
Yeah.
What does double clicking do?
Maybe I need to make it myself.
No, you shouldn't have to. If you double click on it, it should take you to the screen.
Oh, I'm not sure.
I think without moving the mouse so much, maybe. Are you on a Mac?
I am.
I'll have to look at that.
Andreas foiled by Steve Jobs.
I feel his pain. I go through the same thing. So the ability to show like these little, that's a perfect example of one of these sort of little things that are hidden off in the background where you're able to control navigation. And then also the same, like when somebody submits a form, normally it would go directly back to where you came from, but you can control navigation, you control where the user is, and you create all these screens. We started off by building all of these apps as separate apps. Oh, we need a tape, we need a ledgers app, and we need this app, and we need to navigate people around with links. But now it's all a unified interface. You can take anybody anywhere in the app as long as there's information about who's logged in, and you can conform to that. So
if you go, can you go back to the actual view of this? So if you think about this, for those of you being able to watch this, this is an example. So this mini app is something we roll out to all of our customers who are on support contracts with Gamechangers, and you're able to see the different months, what you've spent, what you've done. You're able to review every time we log time. We are able to view what we've logged, what we've done, our update on it, all the guides we prepare for you, which are essentially just like guides of here's what we've done, and here's here's how to do it, and here's how to watch the video. But if you think about this and take it to your own business, there's probably 50 different ways, something like this, externalizing the data you have in Podio. That to me is the key. Using the benefit of Podio to drive all the workflow, all the stuff you want, and then externalizing in a way that makes all of our clients can just see that, they can scroll through, and there's no confusion, and it's really no work for anybody, which is a huge benefit.
I'm curious what now, without showing the actual information. Which one of these is it? This is it. So you can kind of see like another structure. So same thing, all of our apps are really like an entry point where somebody's logging in, and then we use that as a relationship, and then we start showing other information, right? So, right. So the dashboard shows, this is like another style, right? So in our style, the one we showed before, we immediately take the user to the item which they logged in through. But here, instead of that, we don't want to take the person into the employee record. So instead, we land them on the dashboard, and here they can go wherever they want. I don't know if maybe it is a Mac. Yeah. So it's the same thing. And then when you're viewing it, you can actually move around, and then always go back to the dashboard. It's always your home screen.
Nice. And like this again, this is not. I mean, okay, it takes a bit of you're gonna have to play around with it. But this is a very accessible thing. If you don't want all these bells and whistles, where we've got some extra bells and whistles, you can create these pretty easily by just getting a ProcFu account and playing around, right?
Well, in some cases, automatically. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Andreas?
Most of them are iterative. You start off building an app, and it starts with one screen, then it becomes two, then it becomes three, then you add a few behaviors, a couple buttons. Add a couple of dashboards with charts and graphs, and they build out slowly over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jordan is right, though. It is very accessible, and like I said, it's a good opportunity to be in that safe, controlled environment, and be able to not have to worry about that side of things, and just play around and get errors and figure out what the errors mean and learn from them. There's within ProcFu mini app also has like a text box, where the main goal is just to show text, but I've actually found a lot of good uses for it. One other use case that just popped into my head that we should mention is somebody wanted a webhook to grab some data, thrust it into Podio, and then redirect the user somewhere else. So sort of like a confirmation. Have them land on a ProcFu webhook, study what the data of the webhook says, get some information from somewhere, and then redirect them somewhere based on another thing. So that text box was actually handy for us to kind of just have a place to land, catch URL parameters, which you can very easily pull out in the behaviors tab, do things with them, and then redirect the user to another place if they want to. So you find these little uses even for screens that you don't, like some screens have a lot of other little hidden gems that you kind of have to test on your own. It's really about what all you need.
Funny that you mentioned that. I actually hacked text screens myself just a couple of weeks ago to incorporate Ajax calls into mini apps so that you can have, any screen that's showing normally and click a button that then loads another screen in the background, which is just a text screen that has some behaviors attached that do things in the background and report back to the main screen.
I mean, that's awesome. So you're using like a remote curl in the proc script to do that? Yeah, exactly. Right. So you have these text screens set up, and they can do other proc scripts. It's almost like your own back end in this mini app that can do things. And then, buttons can call these pages and be able to catch data, right? We were using URL parameters, but it's the same kind of principles.
So in essence, with this, in the same way that I would say GlobiFlow has there's easy entrance ways into GlobiFlow. There's beginner, medium, and expert, right? Like as a beginner with GlobiFlow, you can do some really cool, easy things. Hey, when this happens, create an item over here and link it, or do that. And then as you grow in confidence and skill, and you keep experimenting and you move up the ranks and you suddenly start to be able to do more. It sounds to me like with ProcFu in general, that's like the same progress, just a level up. It's like, it's like GlobiFlow or PWA has the starter to the expert level. And then you go up to, once you get the expert, sort of like that game, back in the day, we used to play games and you'd start on like the easy. And once you beat it in easy, you'd have to move up to the hard version. And then, and I think Wolfenstein 3D had the daddy don't hurt me level, which was like fucking Nazis everywhere.
Nice. Oh, and, deep cut.
For those who, probably don't remember that game, but Wolfenstein 3D was the shit. And I played it the other day on a modulator and it was awesome to try it again.
Nice.
But it sounds to me like ProcFu has that same, you can get started with a number of these things relatively basically once you reach the level of going to ProcFu, and then you can even grow even further, right?
You can get most stuff done just straight out of the box. And if you're a beginner, I would suggest do not touch behaviors. Like code events and behaviors, that's starting to get into the advanced levels. But just from the point and click interface, you can build your screens, connect your screens, decide what happens when what is clicked and what is selected. You can build some very, very powerful portals.
Absolutely. So now we've got a bit of time left. So given that we've captivated everybody's attention on ProcFu and mini apps, but given that we've talked a bit about the basics here, you were talking earlier before I chastised you into not getting too technical about this new SQL thing that I don't even know what the fuck it is. So go on. We got some time.
SQL is your friend.
So explain, because I've always seen SQL as a bit of a once it gets to that level. But it seems to me in the conversation you were having earlier that it's not that bad. So go on, talk about the thing you were talking about.
SQL is a database, and it's designed to be queried and to return data to you really quickly. Podio is built on a database, but because it is so structurally powerful and structurally non-conforming, it's not just a regular database, and that makes it quite slow, especially when you start doing API calls from a distance. Trying to get basic searches and basic views out of Podio is a lot slower than a traditional database. Now, one of the new beta features in ProcFu is a database sync, where you can connect any MySQL database to your ProcFu account and then mirror any Podio app to your MySQL database. And it starts off in the background, so it depends on how many items you have in your app. It'll warm up, do the sync. It installs the webhooks into the app in Podio. So anytime you make a change to an item in Podio, it'll come through. It has background daemons that keep checking for changes. So if you've got calculation fields that don't trigger any webhooks, we will still catch those changes in time. And if you use them in many apps, any edits you make in the front end in a mini app get automatically pushed to the data sink as well. So your MySQL data of that app is as correct as is possible. And now that you can connect them, well, once you've connected your MySQL database to your ProcFu account, instead of the traditional table screens where you use a Podio view or a search Podio app, you can replace just that screen. So imagine you had your Podio view. When you click on an item, you get your Podio item. Take out the Podio view, replace it with the MySQL representation of that Podio view. And when you click, you still go to the actual Podio item. It's just that one screen that now is a lot faster, is a lot more powerful, because you can put in searches into views, which you can't do in Podio. You can't say select from this view where something is something, or where, you know, email address contains Gmail. You can't do that. It's impossible.
So one of the things that I found about, one of the negatives, if I'm going to go negative, that I found about mini apps where you're dealing with, and I'm guessing this solves it, where you're dealing with an app that has, you know, 1,000 items, and you're loading up a table view with 1,000, like you're with an app that has 1,000 items, and it's slow as shit, because Podio is slow as shit when that, like it's a Podio limitation, I'm assuming.
And the larger your app,
the larger your app, and all these factors, right? Just so that if you're loading up a communications app, if smartphones got connected and you've got a mini app connected to the smartphone communication app, and you've got items, and you got 250,000 calls logged, then, you know, you're going to be sitting there going, oh my God, and you're going to die. What you're saying, as I understand it, then, is because ProcFu can connect to SQL and essentially just go, you do it and it goes, oh, okay, this app, no worries, I'm going to send everything up there automatically. Then on your mini app, when you're looking at a table view, you're taking that table view from SQL, not Podio.
Correct.
Which should be fucking,
which is milliseconds. You can gather 1 million items from SQL in like a matter of milliseconds. So yeah, there's no comparison. And like Andreas said, another huge benefit is the fact that you are able to do queries, or using that table interface that Andreas is mentioning, be able to do queries on fields that are not normally queryable in Podio. So if you think about your filters in Podio, you can do where a relationship contains this or a relationship contains that, you know, dates between X and Y, but you can't say, show me where a single text field contains the words invoice. So in this case, we can query text fields because SQL can query anything. So you can search through the data in much different ways, and it is fast. It is lightning fast, and that's the way that it's meant to.
And as I understand it, and again, I'm going to play the natural role of.
This is like an old style infomercial. And what else can it do? Yeah. Well, let me show you.
Let it blend. That's another deep cut.
But wait, that's not all.
Yeah, right. But no, I'm going to play the natural role of the dummy in this. But my understanding is that GlobiFlow has an ability to push to a SQL table. But to do that, my understanding, and this could be wrong, you essentially have to build a table in SQL, which is like I've got a field here called name. I need to build a table with the field called name. I've got to, and you're essentially building it here, and telling PWA to go, okay, when this shit happens, push this shit to there, right? That's right. Kind of how it works in GlobiFlow or PWA, yes, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so that is then means you have to build all the tables, and you've got to create automations. And if then one thing changes, like fucking hell, blah, 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 you got to redo everything, or you got to adjust everything. Right. What is the difference with this capability? Explain to me the difference here.
So coming back to the GlobiFlow one or PWA one, yes, you have to pre-build your table in MySQL. Then GlobiFlow will do an initial sync, and then everything that happens after that will be based on webhooks. So if you have automations that don't fire the webhook event, those changes will never make it to your SQL database.
Or if hooks tend to be, not very friendly that day. Also,
or calculations, which happen to be so calculations wouldn't make it through.
Right.
Now, the difference in the ProcFu data sync is you add a data sync with the click of a button. You basically just select your app, select your SQL database that you've connected, and that's it. ProcFu will take care of the rest.
Can I ask, what does ProcFu do as far as data types go? Do you have data types in SQL set based on the type of field, or is everything just basically go into SQL as text?
Most things go in as text. If you have category values, they go through. If you have category values where the biggest value is less than 256 characters in length, it'll go through as a varchar. Dates and date times will come through as dates and date times.
Cool.
And things like contacts and app references actually get split into two fields, one with the comma separated IDs and one with comma separated titles.
Oh,
that's to make referencing and searching much easier.
Yeah, because that was one sticking point for me personally, where everything is a relationship. So when I'm in my own environment, those IDs are super critical. And just looking at relationship items by their title is good for view purposes, but it's not so great for KPI and data collection purposes. So having those IDs is money in the bank. And again, new information to me today. The fact that you can get these tables built for you is incredible. I'm assuming the name of there's more. Sorry,
there's more.
Okay.
So to create a data sync, yes, you just select the app, select the database, and click a button. There's also a proc script to create a data sync given an app ID so that you can do this dynamically. I basically have a little proc script piece of code that will take a whole workspace and just create syncs for every single app in the workspace. Wow. And there's another proc script that'll do a repair on one. So let's say you've made some modifications to your app in Podio, there's new fields or something. You just call that script, which you can also do in the UI. You can click repair, and if there's a lot individually, but you can call the script that forces a full resync. It makes sure all your fields are there. If anything got deleted accidentally in MySQL, it'll re-add it for you.
That is one very important limitation to note about the PWA version of the SQL Sync. And Andreas mentioned a couple of them. One is like if you're building your own flows and some of them don't have hook event checked, then that stuff will never get picked up on those webhooks. But also just in general, some people do experience errors with the PWA sync, but unfortunately, there's no support. I mean, it's something that you built for your own purposes and kind of just bolted on. It says in big, bold letters, experimental. People lose their shit over it, but it is an experimental. From a PWA perspective, it is not prime time ready. Like you really want to use it for yourself, use it for testing purposes, but ProcFu is a mature solution. That repair option alone is really like what PWA really needs, because there's no other way to do it other than to stop and restart, and your data syncs happen in the background, whereas PWA data syncs, if you're starting off syncing an app that has like 10,000 items, you've got to sit there on that screen and watch it. And watch it and watch it and watch it and watch it for days, possibly, depending on how many items you have in there. So,
and if PWA exceeds its rate limits, it could die.
Right. So there's enormous benefits to these processes running in the background versus you needing to keep a browser window open for them.
Can I ask another dumb question then, Andreas? Because it sounds to me, or two dumb questions. It sounds to me then that you, with this script or these scripts, you have negated the need to manually build the tables in SQL.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Which is fucking sounds good to me. Like that just seems like a boring as shit thing to have to do. Particularly where there's like, we work sometimes in other languages like Lithuanian and fucking
yes, oh my
Danish.
Goodness, yes.
You know, and having to build those fucking tables where you're like hurdy sorry all the Danish people, but I can't remember what show did that. Hurdy. But that's one thing, and the second would be a question of, so to do that, how hard is this? Like,
you said it's a script where you can have literally launch a whole workspace worth of apps with one single ProcFu call, right? Tables, sync starts, like literally everything at this single click of a button. I don't see how it could get any easier than that.
But you know what it also does for you? it gives you a full backup of your whole Podio account, just in case.
Yeah.
So to get started to this, what would you like if I wanted to do this, because I wanted to do this, what would I need to get started? My first dummy version of this, where I have a workspace with a bunch of shit. Okay, do it on the screen. That's even better. For those of you who are listening, get on your screen.
I mean, that's it, right? So it looks like you supply an app. You decide if you want to include calcs. I'm assuming the columns are named for the external ID of the field, or are you using the field ID? When you create the table, the name of the column, is it the text-based external ID, or are you using the field ID? Is this not the guy? I thought this was the guy.
This is not the guy, no.
No? Okay.
Too many things.
It should be under it should be under ProcFu at the bottom.
Ah, okay.
There's sync create.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
So wait, so
right. So you would go into your configuration and you would add your SQL connection here. I've got a couple added already, and that's a DigitalOcean. So again, if you're not even sure about that, I won't demonstrate it here. But if you go to YouTube, and type it in. You go to DigitalOcean.com. You sign up for an account. You say create database droplet. Create managed database. It rolls out in seconds. It gives you all of the host name, the port, everything that you do. And then you go into the settings and you whitelist these IPs, and then you can connect it. And it's as simple as that, just filling in all of those data. And then back to this guy, that's what you would supply here, right? Is whatever you called your SQL
Correct.
connection.
So is this
or you can do it in the UI if you go from the menu and go to database syncs. On the top right, the menu in ProcFu.
Yeah, this is the one I had played for before, like actually getting it working with an app and it. But this is all. So the user no longer has to build their tables at all or do any field mapping.
No.
It's all automatic. Okay, well that's awesome. Yeah, that's.
And taking that into our control instead of making this a user responsibility and giving them control. Just made these things so much more stable because we know what every field type is.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, like everything can be boiled down to, dates and everything else as text. Like numbers can be read. For those that, like most people who are going to be using this don't care if a number is expressed as text or an integer or whatever. Like you can convert it if you really cared that much. But the question I wanted to ask you though, the column names, are they external IDs? If I go into SQL after this is done, the columns are the external IDs? Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So it really is that simple.
So yeah, it's a one-click solution to get any app into a SQL database. And again, if you're listening to this, go to DigitalOcean, and I should ask them for advertising money. But honestly, like if you're starting out from an environment perspective, I tried to use AWS. I spent a good couple of days on it, and I couldn't get a fucking thing done. I couldn't get a single thing done. I had no idea what I was doing. It was that complicated. But DigitalOcean, you just go in, one click, create database, boom. You get the parameters that you drop in here. And then according to Andreas, the world's your oyster. So that's awesome. That's awesome that you don't have to build the tables anymore, Now, if I don't want to be negative, but just as a let me ask you this, and maybe there's already, this is me being the dummy now. So, and I said to you before, okay, that's okay. Right. Okay. So then you would be working here. Okay. So single result, multi-result query. Okay. Write your query. Right. So something if you've ever like considered this, where if you were to rather than writing your own SQL, to have it be more like JSON based, right? So like pass a JSON object where you had like I could pull out my own coding version of it, but like say this field by this external ID equals this, or this field is greater than this and this field is less than this, or this field does not equal this. Like supply a JSON request and have that converted into SQL. Because for me personally, I do more of that in my own environment. So I never write my own SQL queries. I understand what's going on here. But again, like the average person would have to go and learn SQL, which you should do. Trust me, take it from me. You should go and learn it. But JSON is the language of the present, and it is the language of the future. And sometimes it's easier to just say, here's a JSON object worth of external IDs and comparators. Like, can we just use this instead? Have you ever considered that as an option?
I have considered it, but JSON is not meant for databases, so it does not have a standard representation of this kind of information. So you'd have to create a new kind of a language, which, you know, you have SQL, why do that?
Yeah,
SQL isn't hard, and ProcFu will actually write a lot of the SQL for you. So if you convert, if you go to any Podio view screen, there'll be an icon which will launch ProcFu that'll convert it for you, and it'll generate the SQL for you right there.
Yeah. So like anybody who uses any kind of backend frameworks that involves modeling databases, right? So like I'm using CodeIgniter here. People are familiar with possibly Laravel or Symfony, any kind of PHP framework or front-end framework where they use data modeling, where you can do controlled where statements, right? So I can load a model.
We're gonna put a banner saying fucking technical.
You know, like where I can say where field 1 equals this, and where I can say where field 2 is greater than 0. You know, like this is sort of the structured query language where you break it up by parameter and you don't necessarily have to do it. So I often build APIs where I can take advantage of this, where I'll throw a structured query as a JSON object and let whatever framework I'm using break it up, where, you know, and then you can see like the operators here, right? That I have advantage of. Does not equal, is less than, is greater than. So again, just talking out loud about possibilities, right? Go learn SQL. Go do it. But at the same time, like I do look for opportunities to try to keep things in a JSON realm, because it's a lot easier for me to explain to people and my devs what JSON is versus telling them to go off and learn SQL, you know? So again, not trying to be negative, because obviously having stuff in SQL is awesome. And if you're working with SQL, then you should learn how to at least create very simple SQL statements. Select from this table where these items equals this, done. And that might be the majority. And then maybe you could filter through the results. If you got the results super fast, you could use like ProcScript, or you could use custom foo functions to kind of filter out the ones that you didn't care about. But still, you know, looking for ways to try to make it easier to query databases is something I'm passionate about.
How do I share my screen?
Within Zoom, you should have a share screen.
This is the guy who built GlobiFlow. This is the guy. Like, I just want everyone to know that.
That's awesome.
But when I click share screen, I get an option of like 1,000 windows.
Well, you have too many fucking screens. You should have your share screen should allow you to share a monitor, a full screen, or just okay.
What are we seeing?
I'm seeing configure mini app copy of customer projects.
So one of the things that the new ProcFu does for you, given this is a Podio view, it's a related items view, which is very easy to do in Podio. And this is basically like what you showed earlier, Andrew, with the exception of if I double click, oh, I was wrong. I've got to fix that. But if you click on the convert to MySQL icon here, you'll get this little guy pop up, and you give him permission to do that. You can then choose to create a new table in an existing connection, or I've already got a sync set up for that one. And he'll just go and create everything for you. So the SQL is written for you right here.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah. Well, that's and that's good for learning purposes as well. Watching what the system is teaching you how to do things, right? So that's cool. Yeah.
But this is complicated stuff. I mean, this is SQL that I had to use Stack Overflow for. This is not like SQL 101.
That's why I don't like it. That's why I try to avoid it, because it is.
But your framework will not be able to create SQL as good as this, or as efficient.
You're right. You're right.
Because basically this SQL here is now looking at comma separated integer IDs and finding matches in them.
You're absolutely right. I would have to gather data and I'd have to break it up after the fact, which I often do, right? But again, when you're dealing with SQL, the performance benefit, the difference in performance is negligible. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. And that's where the magic is when you learn how to use SQL, there's all these commands that let you grab data from different tables and join data together. And you can do almost a lot of just from a single query. And that's the stuff that kind of still confounds me. That's the stuff where I call my developer and I'm like, here, you do this.
You can also, a good way to play with SQL is once you have it connected, there's a MyAdmin that's attached to every one. So for all your data syncs, if you click on if you click on any of these, the Podio apps, it'll take you to the app in Podio. Or if you click on the MySQL link, it'll take you to the MyAdmin link where you now have full access.
Oh, no, yes. Yeah.
This is Adminer, yes.
Also something else that I cannot recommend enough. Whenever anybody starts using SQL, a secondary software application to interact with the data in your SQL database, it's called Phpmyadmin. It gets in your face. People want to roll it out. They're like, use this, but this tool is free. You can get it at adminer.org, I think it is. And it's free and it's mega fast and it has an enormous amount of options. This is incredible. This is absolutely stunning that you can get that. You can get that just from a click of a button. That is
and
amazing.
You can see that all the column names are the external field IDs, with the exception of some changes. Like this one, it'll add the _start _end if you have a date field that has an N, for example, because MySQL doesn't have the standard. And anything that has IDs will have the name of the field and then with _IDs, which gives you a comma separated list of just the item IDs.
Nice. Do you store the app item ID itself in here as well?
Nope, don't care about it.
Okay. I have one client who cares about it. It's annoying, but it's not a big problem. No, that's cool. No, the fact that you can get that view right from there, that is you're blowing my mind. That's amazing.
Well,
and like I said,
go ahead, Andreas, please.
I have a script. I should actually share that on the ProcFu space. That'll just create a sync for every single app in a given space.
I mean,
all backed up, all synced.
Yes, you should. Yeah. You should share that. That would be good.
Yeah.
Even I fucking know that. I mean, that sounds really good. So and I promised everyone it wouldn't get geeky, and we went off on a 15-minute geek fest, but I did invite these fucking two. So
Dominic promises you can't keep.
I should know better than that. I knew that it would devolve, but there's some really what I think is good about this in many ways. If you're still listening to this, you're probably a geek or you want to be a geek. But no, I think there's some really accessible things here. There's accessible bits of ProcFu. The mini apps have some accessible bits, but also have, as you've seen, some absolute powerhouse bits. And if we think about the pricing of ProcFu right now, like, I don't know, but Andreas may hook us all in and then fuck us by jacking up the price by 400 times. But I would also say that I think ProcFu is for the power it gives you, it is a no-brainer. Like I feel the same about GlobiMail, which is another of Andreas's products. For the power you get, you are kidding. Like it's a no-brainer. Go sign up. Go to procfu.com and sign up and get the plan. I think the mini app plan is like starts on the second or third of the tiers, or
I think the second one.
It's like $25 a month.
Yeah.
Ish. And for $25 a month, you get an enormous power, and then it just scales up the power you even have. But I mean, it's a very accessible tool, and it is a very accessible tool. And the same I would say for GlobiMail, you just like if you used Podio, GlobiFlow became you have to have it. Like that's all there is to it. I feel like if you do any sort of real development in Podio, I feel like ProcFu is starting go the same way of like, well, you've got to fucking use ProcFu. Like, I mean, that's all there is to it. So, go over there. And I would encourage everyone. I will put in the podcast page, as well as the links and the YouTube video. I will put the links to all of the products that Andreas has. Obviously, ProcFu is the one we spoke about tonight, but I would encourage you to look at GlobiMail. For those of you, who do a lot of email, you can see our solution that using GlobiMail. I still think we've probably got the best one out there. And it just got better, actually. Andrew just made an improvement.
Another cool use case for ProcFu, and my son's coming in at the worst possible angle here today. I'm keep backing up to get away from the sun. Another use case that just popped up. So GlobiMail does have an archive app. Those of you who use it, all of the emails get dumped into an archive app, but it's challenging because that archive is in one workspace and you can't necessarily give a bunch of users access to everyone's emails. So we came up with a solution where we would roll out a copy of this app to everyone's. Now, like Jordan said, the way we do email is that everybody has their own workspace and everyone has their own email log app and all the emails go there. So now in this system that we just recently built, everybody has their own archive app as well, with the addition of a relationship to the email log in which it belongs. And I recently learned, that there in this archive app is a JSON payload containing everything one could want to know, what app it belonged to, what the item was, everything. So it's very easy to use ProcFu to just grab that information and create an item in an app with the relationship already tuned to that item, and then just fill everything in that comes with it. And it's working great. It really is. It's awesome to be able to be in your own log and click through and be able to see the full, as much as Podio will allow us, right? Comments and multi-text fields being what they are, this is the best solution possible to give the user as close to the original version of the email as possible. And they really needed that, and it was good. Another, cool. Like I said, being able to move around ProcFu, create items from anywhere based on the fact that everyone, your admin user or your master user has access to all these workspaces. That ended up being really awesome solution. I'm glad we could give that to them.
Cool. We'll do a new video of the. We'll
totally
upgrade our emails internally as well, because we very rarely get to do our own system, but we'll do that. And once we do, I'll do I did the basics of email, then I did a supercharged email, and now I'm gonna have to do like a fucking hyperdrive doing email. But that's I do definitely encourage you. In fact, you know what? I'll post the links in this podcast to those 2 email videos as well, because the second one uses ProcFu mini apps. It shows you, but it just in general, I think it shows where it's if you don't integrate email and you wish you could, I think it's the best solution that anyone's come up with to date, as far as I've seen. I haven't seen anyone who beats our system. Andreas may say his inbox does, but I don't even know how the fucking thing works, so it doesn't count. But anyway, listen, Andreas, Andrew, I want to thank you guys for not geeking out too much, but I also want to thank you for giving your insights into particularly mini apps, because I think mini apps are a very accessible, understandable way of why you'd want to start with ProcFu. And those business cases that we outlined, I think, are relevant to any business. I can't think of one that wouldn't have a use case where you'd need this either internally or externally. And then, all the other things we've talked about, that exciting Sql Sync, which does sound like fucking exciting.
Crazy.
There's a lot in here. So if as always, this is taking your Podio up another level, but there are some really accessible starts here, and almost anyone I think could probably start going. So I encourage you all to click on the links, check out the products. And if you are struggling, you've got a link to the ProcFu workspace where Andreas helps people, but so does everybody else. I see Andrew helping people. I see, just like with the GlobiFlow forum, there's an enormous user community of help there, and I encourage everyone to use it. Any final thoughts, boys, before we finish? Don't all speak at once.
Thanks.
Jesus Christ, you guys are the worst.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Next time, Actually, next time we do this, because I'll do it from home maybe, and we'll have a whiskey or something, because it's 2 p.m. for you. You can drink. Anyway, thank you very much, guys. Don't forget, if you listen to this, please do like, share, and do all the shit you should be doing anyway. And if you haven't done it already, then stop listening and do it right now. Cheerio.
You've been listening to Supercharged with Jordan Samuel Fleming. Subscribe today on iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify for your weekly dive into how you can supercharge your business by making it powered by Podio. Be sure to check out our website, wearegamechangers.com, where you can learn more and arrange a 30-minute call with Jordan to help you understand how Podio supercharges you.